Now what I'd like to do is give you a brief demonstration of our software and how it seamlessly integrates with Sage 300 Payroll. We're going to create a new employee in Sage Payroll, transfer the employee info into our time and attendance software, create a timesheet entry for that employee, approve time, run the overtime calculator, and populate the Sage time card. So let's log into Sage 300 Payroll and create a new employee in Payroll and transfer that employee profile to the time and attendance system. The inbound transfer is flexible in that we're able to customize the transfer for every implementation. An example of the fields of information that we would transfer to time and attendance is the name of the employee, of course, the ID, the pay group, and the cost center. The transfer process also looks for any changes or updates to the existing employee information, such as a department change, or if you terminate an employee, then it will update the time and attendance system so that you don't continue to transfer employees' time to a terminated employee. So here we're just entering the bare minimum information that we require to create an employee in the Sage payroll system. We'll add the hire date, and we're going to save that employee information. Now this is where we just attach the default cost center to the employee. And all information that's entered into the time and attendance system automatically goes to the default cost center or department, division, or cost center information. And once we're complete with this information, we can add it. And we're done. Now let's transfer the new information into this time and attendance system. So we'll go to the integration, we'll download the new hire information by clicking on the transfer process. And it's complete. So now let's log into Sonic Enterprise as the administrator. And we'll look at the employee list. And we'll do a search for the new hire that we created. And there he is. Now let's assign the employee to a shift. Each shift can be defined with any day or days of the week and can have a start and end time for each day. We can also set a rounding routine or a grace period of time for the start and the end time of the shift. Once the employee is assigned to a shift, employees and managers will always know when they're scheduled to work. And email alerts can be created so that the managers are notified when employees do not clock in on their shift or schedule. Now let's enter time in the timesheet for the employee we created. You can either use the clock in or clock out feature so that you don't have to worry about remembering what time you started or finished work, or you can simply add a transaction for each day that you work. So let's add a transaction for the first day of the week and save it. And for those employees that allocate time to projects or jobs, you can also use the start and stop feature every time you work on a job, or enter a time transaction for each day that you work on the job. Now let's use the copy feature to add additional time transactions to complete the week for this employee. Managers can review the time card, make any edits or changes on behalf of the employee. And when you finish reviewing the time card, we can simply click the Approve button. Now let's calculate overtime. We select the date range of the pay period and click Calculate. Okay. If there's a stat holiday in the pay period, we can run the stat calculator. And we have all the stat rules for each province built into our system. So it would determine what employees qualify for the stat and automatically insert a paid transaction for each employee. If the employee worked on a stat, it would override the earnings code with whatever earning code you choose, like overtime or double time, for example. Now that we've calculated overtime and stat, we would normally run a few of our reports to look at the hours by earnings code prior to transferring them to payroll. But due to our time constraint, we'll just go ahead and run the transfer. As you can see in this time card, we now have a time card that has regular hours and stat and overtime. Now let's go back to Sage 300 payroll and run the transfer to populate the payroll time card. The transfer process validates the information prior to populating the time card to ensure that the data is accurate and complete, and there is error reporting in the event that there is an issue with the transfer. So now we can see that the Sage payroll time card is completely populated. And that completes the entire life cycle of time and attendance with bidirectional integration from Sonic Enterprise to Sage Payroll.